Hi folks, FPL General here, recording a new episode of my 59th minute FPL podcast. Hopefully, if you're listening, it means you haven't quit FPL after those horrendous 2 game weeks. I think I seen a tweet this morning. I think it's the first time since the 2014-15 season that we've had back-to-back game week averages of under 40 points. So, I mean, most of us are in this together, so we've got to just keep soldiering on and hopefully things return to normal before too long. I'm recording on Tuesday morning, the 22nd of October. So, game week 9 wrapped up last night with Sheffield United beating Arsenal 1-0. I was very happy to get my Lundstrom clean sheet, as were many. So we've got Champions League, Europa League midweek. Then we've got a Friday deadline this week, so don't get caught out by the early one. Southampton-Leicester on Friday night, game week 10. Similar format as usual for this episode. Starting with the shoutouts, just one this week. A new member to the 59th Minute Club, Liverpool's Divock Origi. So he was a replacement for Salah. I'm a Salah owner, so I was pretty frustrated when I seen him miss out at the weekend and his replacement came in to get a shout out on the podcast. So I think, as a Salah owner, it could have been a lot worse. Mane was quiet, so I think most people who don't have Salah probably have Mane, so we probably got away with that one, us Salah owners. So hopefully he's back Champions League and back for game week 10 against Spurs. A quick review of game week 9. How did it go for me? I think, there's been a lot of horror scores out there this week. I've seen, before the Monday night game, I've seen people posting some scores of 11, 12, 13 even, with maybe 1 or 2 players to go. So it was a pretty rough game week for a lot of people. I came out of it okay. I came out of it on 41 points. Thanks to Lundstrom and Robertson, really. If it wasn't for those 2 guys, I would have been, as bad as anyone this week. 41 points got me a green arrow from 546k up to 461k. So, I mean, not a huge arrow, but you're going to take any green arrow when it comes, especially in a game week like that where it could have been a lot worse. So I'm counting my blessings, Lundstrom and Robertson. Thank you to those 2. I went into game week 9. I had 2 free transfers and I was seriously contemplating getting Callum Wilson for a -4 and giving him the armband. And to do that, I would have had to sell Robertson. And in the end, every time I go to sell Robertson this year, I just think back to that Champions League goal he scored, where he found himself in the 6-yard box. And I just can't find, every time it comes to, thinking about selling him, I just end up keeping him. And I've got Trent and Robbo, and I may just end up keeping the 2 of them for the season, just set and forget those 2. So what I ended up doing was I like to focus on my weak links. So looking at my team going into game week 9, the weak links were Ashley Barnes and Zinchenko. So I just got rid of those 2, brought in Tammy Abraham and gave him the armband. Captaincy blank, but hey, captains don't score points this season, so not going to worry too much about that. Zinchenko then, I replaced him with Rico. I had exactly 4.2 million, so the game kind of made that decision for me. Of course, I stuck Rico on the bench then for his 8 points, but just happy I went for him over the likes of Kelly. I was even considering going for maybe 3.9 million defender just to sit on the bench, but I'm glad I went for Rico because he looks a really good option. He seems to have played himself into that, making that left back spot his own, and watching the highlights from the weekend, he looks really good. Put a few good balls into Wilson. He's got set pieces, so I think I've got myself a decent asset there, even if it's just a bench option in Rico. So happy with that one. And Tammy obviously is a long-term pick. Didn't work out this week, but I think he's going to have a very good season. I don't see him slowing down in terms of goals. So the only players who scored me points really were the 2 I mentioned, Lundstrom, Robertson. Tomori got me 5 points. Frustrating he got a yellow card, but I'll take that clean sheet all day long. And Sterling, 5 points. I mean, not great for a 12 million plus player. Very, very wasteful at the weekend, Sterling. Very frustrating to watch that game as a Sterling and De Bruyne owner. De Bruyne in particular should have had a penalty. I mean, some people will say it wasn't a penalty, but Zaha basically wrestled him to the ground. Anywhere else on the pitch, it's a free kick. So in my opinion, that should have been a penalty for De Bruyne. Hits the post as well shortly after it. And then worst of all, Gabriel Jesus, greedy player as he is, doesn't lay it back to De Bruyne, who has an open goal. So De Bruyne, probably the best ever performance I've seen from a player who scored 3 points. on another day he's scoring over 10. So I think my armband is on him for game week 10 in my bus team. It'll probably be between him and Sterling for the weekend, depending on Champions League minutes. That could influence my thinking, but that's who it's on at the minute. De Bruyne is just an absolute machine this season. There's a question on him later, so I'll come back to him. Cantwell came off my bench. I started Lundstrom over Cantwell and Rico. So Cantwell was my first sub. He came in for Salah. So Cantwell and Pukki disappointing again this week. It's when it comes to my transfers later, Pukki's on the chopping block this week. Most likely going to go. Just need to decide who for. Moving on to the watch list now. I updated it this morning. I'm struggling to get my words out here today. It's too early to be recording a podcast. Updated the watch list this morning. Added a few players who caught my eye at the weekend and removed a few players that I'm no longer interested in the short term. So I'll start with the positives first. The five players I've added this week. Jack Grealish, 5.9 million, Aston Villa midfielder. He's been phenomenal last couple of weeks. I think he's got something like 28 points over the last 4. So he's been outshining his teammate John McGinn over the last couple of weeks, and it's an interesting one now, Grealish versus McGinn, because I'm pretty sure they're both 5.9 million. They're both looking like really good FPL options. Now the issue with Villa is fixtures. They play City and Liverpool next, so time-wise, it's probably not the right time to be getting on these, but I think once the fixtures clear up a little bit for Villa, I'll be looking at either getting McGinn back, who I had earlier in the season, or maybe Grealish if he can keep up his form. So very interesting one there, Grealish versus McGinn. Now I'll be watching that closely in those City and Liverpool fixtures to see which of them are looking the better asset. I think both are great options. There's not much in it at the minute. I think I probably still slightly favour McGinn. I think long term McGinn still might be the better option there, but time will tell on that one. Another player I've added, a Watford defender, Daryl Janmaat, 4.3 million. What I like about Janmaat, or what has caught my eye over the last 2 game weeks, is that he's got all 3 bonus points in both games. I think he picked up a knock against Spurs and went off before Dele Alli scored, so he actually picked up the clean sheet points there, which was a nice bonus for anyone who has him, which is not many people. It's a very attractive price here, Janmaat, 4.3. Last 2 game weeks, he's got 9 points and 12 points. So he's going to be on the radar. Obviously, that flag is a bit of a worry. I need to do a bit more research myself to see what the issue is there. Fixture-wise, Watford is pretty good as well. I'm just looking at it here. They've got Bournemouth, then it's Chelsea, but then it's Norwich, Burnley, Southampton. So Watford have a pretty decent run. New manager was brought in. He's known for his good defensive structures and his teams are hard to break down. So I think we've seen that already. Watford have been better defensively, since Kiki Sanchez-Flores has come in. So I think Janmaat's an interesting option, maybe if you want to rotate him with someone. But again, he is a player who's had a lot of injuries in the past, which probably goes against my strategy this season of avoiding injury-prone players. Another player who impressed me at the weekend, and he's impressed me all season, Sheffield United's Jack O'Connell, one of their centre-backs. 4.5 million, got an assist against Arsenal. I actually thought I was cheering. I thought it was Lundstrom who got that assist. They look quite similar when they're in the box and they're going up for headers. I was sure that I had an assist there from Lundstrom last night. I've seen a few people tweeting that Lundstrom got the assist as well, so it wasn't just me who made that mistake. But O'Connell assist and 3 bonus points as well. I think he got bonus points in game week 8 as well. So I think Lundstrom is the guy to go for. If you don't have Lundstrom yet and you're looking for a Sheffield United defender, you don't think twice. You just get Lundstrom. Don't be stubborn because his price has risen. He's an amazing FPL option. Watching that Arsenal game last night, it's crazy. It's crazy how high up the pitch he plays. He plays with number 7 on his back. He basically was playing him behind the 2 strikers last night. Gets in the box. He's just a no-brainer. If you don't have him, you just go and get him. He's probably up there with De Bruyne as I would probably say they're the 2 most important players to own this season. That says a lot for a player that was 4 million at the start of the season. He's the top scoring defender again now. I think he's passed out Pereira again after last night. So yeah, if you don't have Lundstrom, you get him. I think if those of us who own him, you start him most weeks as well. Maybe not in maybe Liverpool and City fixtures, but anywhere else, he can get points. And Sheffield United are, I think they're the best defensive team this season. That's 4 clean sheets now. So, I've benched Lundstram quite a few times this season. I started him game week 9. I think I'll be starting him a lot more going forward as well. Just an excellent asset who can get returns going forward, and he's got the bonus of the clean sheets as well. So, yeah, O'Connell, am I going to double up on Sheffield United defence? Unlikely, but there's definitely worse strategies than doing that. So I do like O'Connell for anyone who fancies a double up in the Sheffield United defence. Or if you want to be stubborn and you don't want to get Lundstram, O'Connell I think is the next best pick there. Another defender now, Montoya, Brighton's right back Montoya. I had him on my watch list earlier in the season. I took him off, but I've put him back on now. He caught my eye again at the weekend. He gets forward so often. He finds himself in the box very, very often. He had a shot that he probably should have scored at the weekend. I just think he's a really good attacking fullback. Doesn't have any attacking returns yet this season, which surprises me, given having watched him quite a few times. I'm surprised he hasn't got anything yet in terms of goals or assists. I think they will come sooner rather than later. Just been really impressed with Brighton overall this season. They've been unlucky. They've had a couple of games have changed because of red cards. Aaron Moy got sent off at the weekend, so they had to adjust. Taking Connolly off at half time and stuff like that. But I just been very impressed with Potter and Brighton, and I just think there's so many good options in that team for FPL. I think Montoya is probably my pick of the defenders at the minute. Dunk's been excellent, but I think he's on 4 yellow cards, so you've got to be careful if you're bringing in Dunk. One more and he'll have a suspension. Byrne looks good as well. I think I prefer Montoya to Byrne, though. He's just more of a natural attacking fullback, where Byrne is an out of position centre back playing at left back. Webster, he's been on my watch list for a few weeks as well. Scored at the weekend, so loads of options there. Matt Ryan's an excellent option as a goalkeeper as well. So I do think, though, if I go Brighton defence anytime soon, I think I'll go for Montoya, just going on the eye test over the last couple of weeks. Moving on now to the players I removed from the watch list this week. I actually removed about 12 players this week. It just kind of sums up FPL. There's just no consistency this season, and there's so many reasons not to get players. But I've picked out 5 here, 5 of the obvious ones. I've removed Aguero. Don't want to pay, 12.2 million. I'm not paying 12.2 million for a player and then gonna sweat every week for the Man City team sheets. Jesus is getting a lot of game time. Pep's been talking him up. He says he prefers to play with just one striker. So yeah, that's mainly why I went for Sterling at the start of the season, because I didn't want to have that headache over Aguero. I'm going to come back to Aguero as well because there's a question on him. Fredericks at West Ham, I've removed him as well because I just don't like West Ham defensively without Fabianski. I'm not keen on that goalkeeper, so I think Fabianski been out really dents their clean sheet potential, so I'm not going to go near Fredericks. Yarmolenko I've removed as well. He was benched at the weekend, played the second half. Again, I want my players to play 90 minutes or as close to 90 minutes as possible. So that's a strikeout for Yarmolenko in my book. Heung-min Son is gone as well. Last 3 game weeks, he's played 45 minutes, 72 minutes and 63 minutes. I don't want that for a player who costs almost 10 million. And he also plays for Spurs, who are bang average last couple of weeks, so no chance I'm going to invest close to 10 million in Son at the minute until I see an improvement from Spurs overall, and I see Son getting closer to 90 minutes every week. Last one I'll mention this week for the watch list is Riyad Mahrez. He's gone with Aguero as well. He followed up his 59th minute appearance with a 0-minute appearance, so I've got absolutely no time for Mahrez at the moment either. Moving on now to the Twitter questions. I've picked out 5 or 6 of the best ones here. I've answered a few of them on Twitter as well. So if you asked one and I didn't answer it, go back on the tweet and you might find that I've answered it there. First one came in from Michael. Michael asks, many top players are struggling this season. Have you seen this before? What do you put it down to? Do you see this being a short-term blip or a new trend? And if it's longer term, do we need a new strategy? So yeah, we are seeing a lot of the top managers and top Twitter accounts are struggling this season. It's been a bit of a crazy first quarter of the campaign. even looking at the Elite 64 league that I run, there's a lot of managers down 2-3 million, which you probably wouldn't have seen maybe in the last 2 seasons at this stage. And likewise, I don't know if any of them are in the top 10k, which you don't really expect at this point in the season anyway. But there's definitely a trend this season that a lot of the top managers are struggling. Have I seen this before? Probably not to this extreme. Probably not. So many of us struggling. What do I put it down to? It's hard to put your finger on it. I think this tweet also said, the consistency this season has been inconsistency. There's, Abraham's a good example. I brought him in at the weekend and he dries up. Callum Wilson dries up. Aubameyang's been excellent this season. 2 blanks in a row now. We're seeing it with the likes of Sterling, De Bruyne, Salah as well. There's just no consistency there. But you know what? I think it's a good thing. I think it's making the game more challenging this season. I think it makes it a lot more interesting. It's gonna challenge us in our strategies. I've kind of had a strategy going into the season. Just my usual strategy of just being patient, not worrying about price changes, and just wait until Friday for transfers and stuff like that. And one of my strategies going into this season was to have a core group of players and trust them long term. And I mean, the way this season is going, it's really challenging that. I've had Salah, Sterling all season, the likes of Robertson and Trent as well. And it is pretty hard to stick by them when they're not delivering, week after week. But I always think of the bigger picture. FPL is a 38 game week game, and you can't panic after 9 game weeks if things are not going the way you expect them to. So it's all about just the way I'm looking at it is, it's been 2 hellish game weeks for most people. The way I'm looking at it is that it's a bit of a storm, and we've just got to weather the storm. And hopefully there'll be clear skies ahead. You're not going to go ripping up your team now. Taking point sets before Champions League and stuff like that. Activating the wild card just because 2 or 3 of your players are annoying you. You've just got to be patient, and it's most top managers will always preach patience in FPL, but it's one of the hardest things to do, especially when things are not going your way. Best thing to do after a bad game week, just log out for a couple of days. Enjoy the Champions League games. Come back on Thursday, Friday with a fresh head, and it'll help you avoid making any rash decisions. Again, early days. We've got 3 quarters of the season to go. There's absolutely no need to panic. And there's, even looking at some of the mini leagues I'm in, where there's only maybe 20, 25 managers. There's huge differences in rank, but there's very little difference, in points total. So everyone's, a lot of people are very tightly grouped. If you can put 2, 3, 4, a run of 2, 3, 4 really good game weeks together, you can absolutely fly this season, because, as I say, things seem to be pretty packed together even after 9 game weeks. So just keep making logical decisions, stay calm. If captaincy hasn't been going your way, doesn't mean you need to change your approach. Keep making logical decisions, and hopefully things will start, logic will start to be rewarded soon. The main thing is, don't panic. A lot of people are in the same boat here, so you just got to keep making good decisions and always think of the bigger picture. If you have 1 or 2 bad game weeks, it's only 2 game weeks out of 38. Overall, it's not gonna define your season. So just keep the head up, keep making good decisions, and the green arrows will come. So the question was, do I see it as a short-term blip or a new trend? I feel it's probably more than likely just a short-term blip. I do expect things to calm down a little bit at some point. Hopefully it's soon. I've been saying that on quite a few podcasts, that I'm hoping things are going to calm down soon. Hopefully Game Week 10 will be the one where the likes of De Bruyne, Sterling, Salah, all these guys deliver, and everything is restored to normal. Next question came in from FPL Big Bear. Very good FPL manager, FPL Big Bear. Make sure to give him a follow on Twitter. Big Bear asks, what would you do with Aguero if you owned him? So this is a tricky one. I'm just glad I don't have that headache this week. So he didn't play a minute in Game Week 9. There's Champions League midweek, so again, Champions League might influence decisions here. The tricky thing with Aguero now is fixtures. City play Villa and Southampton at home in their next 2, so it's extremely difficult to sell Aguero before those 2 games if you own him. So I think if I was in the position of owning him, I think I would probably keep him for those 2 and then maybe reassess after that. I'm just looking at City's fixtures here. So it's Villa and Southampton at home next. Then it's Liverpool away and Chelsea at home. So maybe a Liverpool fixture is an opportunity, game week 12, maybe to ship Aguero if you don't want that headache every week of whether he's going to start or not. But I do think selling him before those two home fixtures is pretty hard to do, and it's pretty dangerous as well. So I think I probably would end up keeping him for 2 more weeks and then reassess things. You can look at it as he's had his rest now, and just hope that he starts those 2 home games that are coming up. Question from Martin Pramuka. Martin asks, Tielemans or Maddison? Who would you go for if you didn't have either at the minute? So I don't have either, and my answer to this question is probably neither. I don't really have space to fit them in, and it's not really bothering me that I don't have a Leicester attacker at the minute. If I had to choose, I was actually just looking at their points totals there, and I was actually surprised to see Tielemans actually has more points than Maddison now. It's 37 to 36. Maddison's a player, he's a funny one. He always passes the eye test, has loads of shots. He's very creative, but he flatters to deceive. He doesn't always convert it into FPL points. It was the same last season, so that always kind of puts me off him. And there's a 0.8 million difference in price now. I think Maddison's 6'4", and I think Tielemans is 6'4", and Maddison is 7'2". So I do like the price saving, to be honest. At the minute, there's very, as we say, there's very little between them in terms of total points. Tielemans, I think, is a fabulous footballer, and I think he will, rack up a decent FPL score this season as well. He's got the potential to, get a lot more attacking returns. He plays quite deep often, but yeah, at the minute, I don't think there's too much between them. And I think if I was forced to make a decision this week, I think I'd probably go Tielemans just for the 0.8 saving and use that 0.8 elsewhere. But probably long term, who's gonna score most points? I would probably say Maddison over the course of the season. But again, I don't have either, and I'm not in a rush to go and get either. I'd probably be looking to get Vardy before either of them. But again, with my team structure, it's very hard to fit Vardy in. Question from Kenneth. Kenneth asks, can Gilbert or Target become this year's Doherty? 4.4 million attacking wingback. So yeah, the Aston Villa fullbacks Gilbert and Target were impressive at the weekend. Target scored the winner, and I'm pretty sure Gilbert got an assist as well. So I've been impressed with Gilbert. He's the one on my watch list. I don't think Target is on my watch at the minute, but both are looking equally good at the minute. Now, I think a caveat to this is that Brighton game, I think the red card affected things big time in that game and probably gave the fullbacks a lot more license to get forward. But again, great value, 4.4 million. I like Aston Villa defensively this season, but again, just going back to Grealish and McGinn, it's fixtures. It's not the right time to do so. So, probably going to give it a couple of weeks. Give Gilbert and Target another couple of weeks to maybe see if one of them stands out over the other. Again, it's probably a 50-50 decision at the minute. I think I would probably lean towards Gilbert. Just seen more of him this season, and I really like him going forward. So that's the way I would go, but I wouldn't do it probably for another couple of weeks. So hopefully maybe, those guys can get close to Doherty levels. I don't think they will. It's funny, Doherty could end up being this season's Doherty. He's very quietly racking up the points, even though he's not starting many games. Don't get him. Traore's playing a lot of games at right wing back, but Doherty's got a very healthy point return for the amount of game time he has. Question from Mike. Mike made a big risk going from De Bruyne to Mahrez last week. He asks, is it essential to get De Bruyne back? I would say absolutely yes. I think anyone who sold De Bruyne or for some reason doesn't have him yet this season, you've got to get him. That's got to be your priority, especially ahead of Aston Villa and Southampton at home. Watching how De Bruyne played at the weekend, if I didn't have him this week, that would be my number one priority. At all costs, go and get him, even if it's a -4. I mean, I took a -4 to get De Bruyne back in Gameweek 3, and again, it's probably one of the easiest -4s I've ever had to make. I think it's actually the only -4 I've taken this season. So if there's any player that merits a points hit, I think it's Kevin De Bruyne this season. So just get it done, and you'll enjoy your weekend a lot more if he's in your team. Last question I'll tackle this week is from Jalal. what are my thoughts on navigating the Man City defence? So Jalal uses the word navigate here. I think I would use the word swerve or avoid, I think, at the minute, in terms of Man City defence. Unless you're someone who likes to pay a premium for a goalkeeper, Ederson is a good option. But I mean, if you look at the total points for goalkeepers so far this season, a lot of the budget guys are matching Ederson or even doing better. I think Patricio's number 1, Henderson's number 2 now. So I still favour the cheaper goalkeepers. One thing to note on Henderson is be careful, because I'm pretty sure he's on loan from Manchester United, so I don't think he can play that Manchester United fixture, which is Gameweek 13. So if you're a Henderson owner or you're thinking about bringing him in, just bear in mind you could be without a goalkeeper in Gameweek 13. So yeah, I'm not looking to fork out for Ederson at the minute. So Pep played Rodri and Fernandinho, 2 midfielders, at centre-back at the weekend. Mendy came in at left-back and Cancelo played right-back again. But, there's question marks over Mendy. Is he fit enough to play every week? There's Zinchenko could come in any given game week. Cancelo, he's looking good, but Kyle Walker's not going to sit on the bench every week. So for me, it's just an avoid. Otamendi, missed out at the weekend. Let's see if Otamendi comes back in Champions League. But I mean, surely Pep can see how bad Otamendi has been recently. Any defender who jumps into tackles the way he does, shouldn't be anywhere near that Man City team. If I was Pep Guardiola, I would just continue playing, Fernandinho and Rodri at centre back and just leave Otamendi as far away from the starting 11 as possible. John Stones going to get back in? Which would maybe free up Rodri or Fernandinho to go back into midfield. So I really don't like Otamendi, and I wouldn't be surprised if that's him out of the team now. So my answer to Man City defence at the moment is just avoid them unless you want to pay for Ederson. Wrap up the podcast now with captaincy chat and transfers for game week 10. Captaincy is probably a little bit more straightforward this week than it has been the last couple of weeks. Man City are at home to Aston Villa, so I'm not going to look past that one. As I say, I've got Sterling and De Bruyne. I've got it on De Bruyne at the minute. I'll see what happens Champions League in terms of minutes and obviously performance, and hopefully they avoid injuries as well. I think most likely I'll stay with De Bruyne. Just been so consistent this season. And Sterling's annoyed me a lot this season as well, so it's probably easier to go De Bruyne in that case. But that will probably go down to the wire, that decision. Chelsea are away to Burnley, so I never like any players playing away at Turf Moor, so I don't really like Abraham this week as a captain. Arsenal are at home to Crystal Palace. Aubameyang coming off 2 blanks. Not sure I like that one either. I mean, I love Aubameyang as a player, but I never trust Arsenal, and that's why I've said it a few times this season. I find it very hard to pay 11 million for an Arsenal player, even if it is someone as good as Aubameyang. There's just too many clowns around him. Last night, he was starved of service. You've got players like Granit Xhaka in midfield, and young kids like Saka. Pepe's not doing much yet either. So that's why I don't like investing so much in Aubameyang, and I would never trust him for captaincy for that reason either. Liverpool are at home to Spurs. Yes, Spurs have been pretty poor, but it's pretty hard to captain the likes of Salah or Mane in that fixture, because Spurs at the end of the day, they're a good side. They can shut any team out on their day, so I'm not keen on Liverpool captaincy either this week. If you're looking for a differential captain, which you shouldn't be, you should always just captain the player you think is going to score the most points. There's no need to go trying to be too clever. Man United probably have the best fixture this week away to Norwich. Likes of Rashford, maybe Martial will come back into the starting 11. Don't do that. Just don't do it. I just threw it in here because they do have the best fixture. So yeah, for me, Man City captain this week is an easy one. Transfers, what am I going to do in game week 10? It's probably a pretty simple one for me this week. It's either bank the transfer or sell Pukki. If I decide to sell Pukki, the question is who for, because I don't have any cash in the bank. Jimenez is the one I probably would go for, but I can't afford him. The other options then are Chris Wood. Chris Wood, who's turned into Cristiano Ronaldo. You know, when I brought in Barnes, Chris Wood turned into Cristiano Ronaldo, and he scored 4 in his last 4. So I do like Wood. He's very effective for his price. He just nothing fancy, gets the job done, ticks in 5 or 6 points most weeks. A lot of people are mentioning Danny Ings this week. Another one of my golden rules going into the season was avoiding injury-prone players. I made a list of about 30-40 players who I'm just going to avoid this season, and Danny Ings is on that list. So for that reason, I'm just not going to go there. He's probably, I think he's got. Did he get 90 minutes in the last 3 games, which is very impressive for the man who's made of wet paper. He's probably a sneeze away from a hamstring strain. So anyone who goes for him, it's brave. Hopefully it pays off for you. But for me, I'm just not going to take the risk with Danny Ings. He burned me last season, so I'm just not going to go back there. Another option for me is a player I've been talking up a lot this season, is Mopai at Brighton. Again, the red card at the weekend probably affected Mopai and Connolly, so they're probably flying under the radar a little bit because of that. They probably didn't get much opportunities because they were down to 10 men. That goal that Webster scored, he headed it across goal, and both Connolly and Mopai were just stooping to head it in, but obviously it went across the line and Webster got the goal. So that's a good sign. Every time I watch Brighton, I like them. I'd like a slice of the pie because I just enjoy watching them, and I would like to have an FPL asset. So Mopai is probably the most likely Pukki replacement for me. So it's basically just spending the rest of the week deciding whether I would rather bank a transfer and give Pukki more time. What is it? 5 blanks and 6 now. So it's frustrating, but he's still a good player. Norwich, maybe they're going to turn the corner now. They got their first clean sheet. They got a point against Brighton. I think that was their first point away from home. They've got, I'm just looking at the fixtures here. Norwich have Man United at home, which is not a bad fixture these days. Then they've got Brighton, and then they've got Watford, then Everton and Arsenal. So it's not awful. It's not awful for Norwich. Pukki could turn it on again very quickly. So it's a tough one. I think the easy option is just sell him, which is probably most likely what I will do, and probably get Mopai. But again, let's see what happens. Champions League, Europa League. Hopefully there's no injuries and stuff like that. But that's where I am on Tuesday with my thoughts in terms of transfers. As I said, I think anyone who can get from Pukki to Jimenez, Pukki to Wilson, Pukki to Vardy, I like those ideas. If you don't have Abraham, Pukki to Abraham makes sense as well. There's loads of striking options, and Chris Wood, I do like Chris Wood, and Danny Ings, I do like Danny Ings as a player. Just my strategy this season is going to avoid those injury prone players, which is most likely going to cost a transfer in and a transfer out again later when he does get that injury. That's it for this week, folks. Lots of content on Patreon this week. I will be recording 3 Patreon podcasts this week. I did one already on Monday, which covers some thoughts on the Liverpool and City games, and also some more thoughts on the season so far and how we deal with it. Wednesday, I'll be recording a podcast covering the Sheffield United Arsenal game and a few more highlights that I've watched as well. And Friday, I always do a podcast on Friday for patrons, just answering their questions ahead of the game week, and just going through my finalised lineup and my captain and all that kind of stuff, and any news from the press conference as well gets covered in that one. There's a couple of WhatsApp places up for grabs on my Patreon offering. It's limited to 100 people this season. I think there's about 91 signed up to that one. So if you want to get one-to-one WhatsApp access to me and access to the WhatsApp group as well, just sign up before it fills up. Or any questions, just send me a message on Twitter at FPL General. Any support on Patreon is much appreciated. What do I need to mention? The main thing this week is don't miss the Friday deadline. Don't get caught out by the early one. I'll be on the FPL show this week, this Thursday night. If you're in a country where you can watch it live, check it out on Friday. I'll post the links on Twitter. It'll be available on the Premier League website and the Premier League app. So check out the FPL show. It's always a good watch. And good luck in Game Week 10, folks. Hopefully, fingers crossed. I mean, we can't have a third hellish game week. So hopefully, last 2 game weeks, the average has been less than 40. Hopefully game week 10, add those two together, and the average is going to be about 80 points, and we can all just enjoy our weekends that little bit more. So yeah, enjoy the Champions League. Be patient with those transfers. And good luck in game week 10. I'll be back next Tuesday with another episode. Cheers for tuning in, folks.